So could you briefly, I guess, discuss or describe what the business is, such as the industry and what industry it's in, and the number of employees and how old the company is?
Um, the company is in the business of agriculture, so in particular vineyard, and also development of land. Um, Currently, it's leased. The property is leased out, so the number of employees is basically zero at the moment.
Oh wow.
So, uh, we're managing the property with the intention of getting the agricultural to produce grapes that can be sold. But as I mentioned, the property is being leased out to another grower at the moment.
All right. And what's your educational background?
My educational background, well, I've been through university and graduate school, so my education's like in science and physics. That's not necessarily related to the business, but it's graduate level physics at the University of California.
And as you said, there's zero employees entirely in the entire corporation.
Um, well, there would be two minor employees. That's a bookkeeper and a treasurer. I'm basically the treasurer, but the amount of time that I put in is relatively small. It's just a matter of keeping the books straight and making sure all the bills are paid. So it's not like an 8 hour a day job.
That makes sense. And did your parents have any businesses before this one?
Yeah, this business started in 2001 with some seed money that came from my mother. We bought some property in Sassoon near Fairfield, California. And they were involved in other businesses, not related to this one. They had a beverage distributorship in Vallejo, which was wholesale beverages like beer, wine, and soda pop. That was a Valnet beverage. And then also we had some cattle business. We raised some shorthorn cattle in Napa County. And also there's other family businesses involving my mother's relatives that are also in vineyard in the Napa Napa Valley.
Okay, and why did you start the business, and what form of business did the company choose, like an LLC, sole proprietorship, or one of those?
Oh, that's interesting because we started out as a limited family partnership, and the drawback of that was that a limited partnership has a general partner or a set of general partners and limited partners. And after my parents passed away, and we wanted to split it up among the heirs, uh, it seemed like a better deal to move to an LLC, so that we would operate with a operating agreement that all the partners would agree to, and it's a little bit more giving everybody a voice. So we're now currently an LLC,
Okay,
Limited Liability Corporation.
and why did you start the business in 2001?
Why did we start it?
Yeah.
We started it because I was working on some estate planning for my mother, and it would be better in terms of estate taxes to have her assets working in a company than left alone in a brokerage account where the tax assessment wouldn't have any discounts due to being in business. So part of the motivation was saving on inheritance taxes.
That's a good motivation. And did you guys write a business plan when you went to open up the company or start the company?
We had been involved in vineyard business in Napa for a long time, so that's something we're kind of used to. So we didn't write up a business plan. We decided to just kind of model it on what we've been doing before.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And could you describe, or I guess, what's the marketing strategy and like unique selling proposition that you guys would have or have?
Well, uh, in that business, one of the best strategies to have is to look for a good vineyard manager. So, I know several that I think are good in the Napa County area. Larry Bettinelli, Michael Nunez, and so forth. And you want them to be involved because they can not only manage the crop production during the year, but also they have connections with wineries and people that would be purchasing the grapes. And it's good to have a vineyard manager that the wine grape buyers know, so that they have some reputation that they can kind of count on their previous deliveries. So we worked with Larry Bettinelli and had relationships with all kinds of wineries, including, through him, Kendall Jackson in Sonoma and Sterling Winery and in Napa and others. So one strategy is look for or find out about vineyard managers and get a good one, and have them help you manage the day-to-day operation of the grape growing business.
That makes sense. Could you describe one specific marketing trick that you or your company used to attract customers?
Well, nothing particular, but we would go to wine growers meetings occasionally and just make contacts with people. So most of the stuff was word of mouth.
Like networking?
It was small scale word of mouth, not networking, not so much advertising or trying to sell. We're not marketing to the general public.
Yeah.
We're marketing to specific wineries, and it's more important to have a good relationship with your customers than it is to worry about trying to market it to the general public or to all the wineries at once. So developing a good relationship with your customer, I think in this business is particularly important, rather than, for example, cutting costs. In some businesses, the idea is to cut the cost of production down as much as you can, because it'll increase your profit margin. But in this business, it's better to develop good relationships with your customers who are actually interested in high-end quality, rather than knowing about whether the grapes they bought, you did them as cheaply as possible.
Yeah, certainly. That makes sense.
So it's like selling, not quite luxury items, but it's like selling something like art. You don't want to find out that the people that you're trying to sell things to found out that you were cutting costs on everything you could.
Yeah.
So some things like maybe making bolts or hammers or automobiles, or chemicals. If you're just producing chemicals, then the end product is just how cheaply can you produce it in bulk. But that's certainly not true for growing quality grapes. You don't want to do them as cheap. You don't want to grow them as cheaply as you can, just for the sake of lowering the cost. You want to make sure that they're high quality, because, like a good work of art, that's what sells them.
Certainly.
So it's a difference. Not all businesses are should concentrate on what's called cost accounting. Cost accounting is where you keep track of the cost of the production of every single item and try to reduce the cost. Well, that might make sense, like I say, for producing chemicals or cars, but it's somewhat out of place in producing, let's say, top quality grapes.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Do you guys have a balance sheet or an income statement? And
Yeah. I'm the treasurer. I produce the balance sheet every year, and I communicate with the tax accountant on the details. We have a balance sheet. We have a profit and loss. For this business, a simple strategy on that worked fine. You can use relatively fancy accounting systems if you want, or you can use a canned accounting system like QuickBooks, which I don't have any problem with. They're fine if you have to, deal with a lot of information from the banks or produce a lot of invoices and so forth. In our case, I like to use just simple spreadsheets, because I can see everything on one. I can see what I'm doing
Yeah.
all on one page rather than have to deal with a database. So QuickBooks, you deal with a database kind of, and that's okay. Uh, it's certainly a good way to keep your books. But in our case, spreadsheets were fine.
All right.
There's
And
enough detail.
did you have the projected financial statements? Like, I'm
Um,
not asking for that. I just mean, did you have them?
yeah, I can make them, but I usually things are kind of reach a pretty steady state. So, as I say, currently our business model is just reduced to leasing the property.
So, did
So,
you ever have cash flow problems?
did we ever have cash flow problems? Um, I never had to borrow money to do vineyard planting, but in principle, uh, replacement of vineyards, would have caused us to have gone out and looked for a bank loan.
But that didn't
So
happen.
that didn't happen, and before we had to replant, I arranged a lease, so that's not an issue. But usually in this business, uh, the cash flow is pretty steady. It's just how many tons per year you grow and the price per ton you get from the customers. So as long as you keep your customers happy, you maintain your contracts with them. But you need to retain some earnings to face eventually replanting the vineyard, because vineyards don't last forever. They last at most maybe 25 or 30 years before a lot of the production's gone down and you have to replant. But if you have a fairly long operation, you have a reputation, it shouldn't be too hard to arrange a loan with a bank to do that. But we haven't suffered any cash flow problems.
And how did you price your products or services? For example, like based on cost or competition or profit margins?
Uh, well, in some of these areas like Napa County or Solano County, you can find out what is called the average price for, let's say, Chardonnay or Pinot Grigio or Cabernet, and we just try to target our prices to be somewhere at the average, not too high, not too low, so that the grapes would be reasonably priced, and we found that we could sell them pretty well that way. We never ran into a case where we had to drop the fruit on the ground.
That's good. That's really good. And like earlier, you mentioned that you guys didn't really focus on much advertising, if any, right?
Yeah, we didn't focus on it. That's right.
So it was mostly networking and word of mouth and
Yeah, our vineyard manager was very well connected, so
oh,
we were in touch with wineries from day one. When you plant the grapes, right? It depends on some details, but you either have 2 or 3 years where you don't have a crop. So you have to absorb the costs before when the crop comes in, and you definitely want to have customers lined up. We took a chance, I think, at the beginning, and just planted the vineyard, and kind of depended on the reputation of our vineyard manager to get contracts, but that worked out. Some people, they insist on getting contracts before they plant. I'm not sure that works out so well.
yeah, certainly. I see how that would be a problem.
You have to take some kind of risk in the business, and so that's one reason to have a very good, reputable vineyard manager.
And do you guys have a website? And if you do, did the website help and how?
I did have a website. It's not very active anymore, but it was mainly to give information to the other partners.
Do you remember the URL of the website?
I can look it up. It was something like smithfamilypartners.com, but I don't have it on the top of my head.
Okay. And when you guys started up, did you finance your business?
Well, as I say, it was financed from money that came out of my parents' brokerage accounts.
So you didn't borrow money from the bank?
No, not at that time. No. So we purchased the property. We basically borrowed. We did it in this sense. My parents' assets were in a brokerage account, And brokerage accounts allow you to borrow on margin. So it's not a formal mortgage or a bank loan, but some of the costs of originally purchasing the property were in the form of a mortgage, not a mortgage, but a margin account borrowing based on assets. So it was all backed by securities.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand. And how many, I guess, where is your business and why did you choose that place and how did you choose that place?
Oh, okay. So the business is located in the Suisun Valley near Fairfield. And one of the reasons we chose is we found a farm of about, roughly 100 acres that was for sale and is in a reasonable place. It's in Solano County. It's not Napa County, but it's very close to some wine growing areas in the hills near near Napa County. And this property has some conservation easements and other things which were lowered the price over free property. So we decided that having a conservation easement on our property wasn't a bad idea. We weren't really intending on selling it and buying another piece of property, so we didn't care whether that depressed the cost of what you could sell it for. We weren't trying to maximize the cost of the value of the property. So it has a conservation easement on it, which we thought was okay. It's compatible with the idea of keeping the property for a long time within our group of partners, and it was for sale right in an area that looked like it was reasonable. I mean, there are other vineyard operations in that part of the Suisun Valley, so it's not a totally new item for that type of agriculture in that location.
And I guess finally, did you ever run into problems with the law, such as being sued by someone? And if yes, how did you guys solve the problem and what were the results? And if no, what principles did you use to abide by the laws?
In our case, we bought the property, like I said, with this conservation easement on it. So there's some clauses in there for what you're supposed to, do or not do. So we just decided to not do anything against the agreement the conservation agreement. And the only other thing was there was some eminent domain issues that came up regarding to widening a bridge that crossed our property. But that was just a simple matter with the county. There's never been any lawsuits.
Wow. Okay, that's good. And yeah. I guess finally, you mentioned that you had no employees besides the vineyard manager. And one of the questions I'm asked you to ask is, what's a trick that you use to motivate your workers?
Well, you see, that's that having a vineyard manager is a little bit special type of arrangement because technically they're not an employee. A vineyard manager is their own contractor, so they contract with you to do the job. So in some sense, you're contracting with a vineyard manager who then has his own employees and his own bookkeeping and his own workman's compensation and all the details of payroll, but that's not your worry. So you contract with the vineyard manager who then has their own business, their own payroll, their own tax reporting and withholding and stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that.
It's like delegating.
Yeah, you delegate that, but in other words, so the vineyard manager's employees are not your employees. They're just part of what came along with the contract.
That makes sense. Oh,
that's it. Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time.